Karla Homolka had everything going for her. She was young and attractive. She had an entire future ahead of her. She had a teenage sister named Tammy who looked up to her. But instead of protecting her, Karla would become involved in a twisted fantasy that ended Tammy's life. And why would a woman do that to her own flesh and blood? A man. A man she wanted to please so badly that nothing, not even her younger sister, was off limits. Welcome to Because of Him, where every true crime story has one thing in common. A woman whose obsession, jealousy, or desire for a man drove her to commit a shocking crime. Karla Leanne Homolka was born on the 4th of May, 1970, in Ontario, Canada. She was the eldest of 3 daughters in a middle-class family that, on the surface, looked completely ordinary. Her father sold vacuum cleaners door to door. Her mother was a homemaker. Karla loved animals. She wanted to be a vet, and by her teenage years, she was already working in veterinary clinics, which is worth remembering because it is exactly where she learned how to handle sedatives. People who knew her described her as bright and outgoing, confident, maybe even a little controlling, but nothing in her background screamed danger. And that is sort of the point of this whole channel. The women we talk about rarely appear as what we expect a villain to look like. In October 1987, 17-year-old Karla met a 23-year-old man named Paul Bernardo at a hotel restaurant. He was charming. He was ambitious. He talked about wanting a big house, a nice car, the whole picture-perfect life. Karla was smitten almost immediately. Unbeknownst to her, Paul was already a bona fide SA offender by this time. Police would later link him to a string of assaults on young women in the local area. By 1989, Karla and Paul were engaged. Before Karla ever became part of this story, Paul already had a secret life. From 1987, a man the media called the Scarborough Rapist was terrorizing women in the Toronto suburb where Paul grew up. The police had a list of possible suspects, and Paul's name reached them twice, once from a bank employee and once from Tina Smyrnis, the wife of one of Paul's closest friends, who told detectives he had bragged to her about liking rough intercourse and that he had once been mentioned in an earlier SA investigation without ever actually being interviewed. Detectives were not convinced by her call. They found her account awkward and only reluctantly brought Paul in. On the 20th of November 1990, they finally sat down with him. 35 minutes. That is how long it took police to decide that a well-spoken, well-adjusted man like Paul could not possibly be their SA offender. He handed over samples of his hair, blood, and saliva anyway, almost like he knew none of it would matter. He was released the following day. Those samples sat untested for more than 2 years. How different would this story be if someone had simply pushed that one file to the top of the pile? Instead, Paul walked out of that police station and went on to kill 3 people. On Christmas Eve 1990, just over a month after that interview, something happened in Karla and Paul's house that should have ended everything right there. Karla's younger sister, Tammy, was 15 years old. Karla wanted to give Paul something special that Christmas. So, she stole sedatives from the veterinary clinic where she worked, and together, she and Paul drugged Tammy in her own bedroom. Tammy never woke up. She choked on her own vomit while unconscious and died. And for years, everyone in her family believed it was a tragic accident. Let that sit for a second. Karla did not just stand by while a man harmed someone. She planned it. She got the sedatives, and the person she used them on was her own little sister. Somehow, unbelievably, life carried on. In June 1991, Karla married Paul in a lavish ceremony in Niagara-on-the-Lake. Horse-drawn carriage, white dress, the works. The media would later call them the Ken and Barbie of Canadian crime, because that is genuinely what they looked like in the photographs. Weeks after the wedding, 14-year-old Leslie Mahaffy was locked out of her own house late one night after curfew. Paul and Karla came across her and abducted her. Over the following days, Leslie was held in the couple's home. They tortured and SA her and videotaped their vile act. That tape would not surface until years later, and it showed Karla was not a passive witness in that house. She was actively involved. Leslie did not survive. Her body was found encased in concrete in a lake weeks after she disappeared. Less than a year later, in April 1992, the couple targeted 15-year-old Kristen French as she walked home from school in St. Catharines. They pulled into a church car park, and Karla lured Kristen close enough for Paul to grab her. Kristen was held for days and subjected to the same horrific treatment as Leslie. Her body was found in a ditch nearly 3 weeks later. 3 teenage girls, 3 families destroyed. 12 days after Kristen's body was found, police came knocking on the door of the house Karla and Paul shared. They wanted to talk to him. Nothing came of it. No arrest, no search warrant, nothing that slowed either of them down for even a day. Paul would later brag that he stayed, in his own words, as cool as a cucumber the entire time officers were sitting in his living room. On the 5th of January 1993, just over 2 years after her sister Tammy's death, Paul beat Karla so badly that her own parents stepped in and told her to leave the house. She moved in with them. A month later, on the 9th of February, police sat Karla down and asked her directly what she knew about Paul's role in the murders. She said nothing, not one word to police. Then she told her family everything, and soon after, the authorities were alerted. Paul was eventually arrested. He admitted to detectives that he had taken part in the SAs, all of them. But the murders? He put the blame squarely on Karla, and soon after, she was arrested too. Karla then lawyered up faster than lightning and decided to go against her husband to secure herself the best deal on the table. Paul was charged with SA and the murder of the 3 teenage girls, including Karla's own sister, while she was charged with manslaughter for the same offence. And this is the part that pissed off people in Canada, even to this day. Karla portrayed herself as an abused victim so convincingly that prosecutors charged her with manslaughter instead of murder. They did not yet know about the videotapes that would have exposed how far Karla was from the innocent victim she claimed to be. Paul's own lawyer later retrieved the tapes from a bathroom light fixture after Paul, already behind bars, told him where to find them. He then kept them for 17 months until new lawyers took over the case and eventually handed them to prosecutors. By the time those tapes finally reached the courts in September 1994, Karla's plea deal was already signed, sealed, and delivered, and legally impossible to undo. She had struck her bargain back in May 1993, more than a year before anyone outside that house had seen what was recorded on those tapes. Prosecutors later stated they would never have agreed to a deal with Karla if they had seen the tapes first. A couple of years before her conviction, Paul was convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder and was declared a dangerous offender. He remains in prison to this day, and the only way he will be coming out is in a body bag. As for Karla Homolka, she was convicted in July 1993 of 2 counts of manslaughter after entering a plea deal. As part of that agreement, she was barred from profiting from the victims through interviews, documentaries, books, or anything similar. After serving 12 years, Karla walked free in 2005, a release that still angers many Canadians. Karla later remarried, changed her name, and had children of her own. In 2017, Karla made headlines again after she was fired as a volunteer at a Christian school, following public outrage over her being around children. Karla Homolka started as an ordinary young woman with a bright future ahead of her. Then she met Paul Bernardo, a man she let turn her into the most hated woman in Canada, full stop. Had Karla not eventually turned on him, only God knows how many more victims there would have been. Subscribe and stay tuned for the next shocking story. There is always a male-centered woman whose obsession, jealousy, or desire for a man ended in tragedy.